All right, folks, I got that Honda done I was working on. We're going to get back on this. Currently, no pun intended, we're at or near 0 amps of draw. We left off by leaving that fuse out, that fuse number 4. So that's still out down there on the floor. And I pulled the hush panel off the side. The easiest thing to get to in this car is the radio. And I brought us up a diagram for the radio, because if you remember, that was one of the potential, to get out my old man thing here, potential causes of this problem. We had the radio, media disc player, HMI, which we don't have, an auxiliary audio input. So this junction is simply a splice. It's in the harness. We're not going to get to that. Besides, it's not pinned, and all the wires coming off are the same color, so it's not going to be beneficial for us to find that. The radio, however, we can get to, and that is here. So that's this here, the A11 radio module. And hence, here's our fuse, F4, 15 amp, red with violet. Comes down to J200, and it comes down to connector X1. So we need to go and find connector X1 on the radio module, the one that has red with violet. We're gonna unplug it, and then we're gonna stick that fuse back in. You guys are propped up on the, can you see me? Yep, okay, I can see my fingers under the passenger side and the passenger side footwell. Take my head off, stick my head down here, and connector X1. Pin 1 is red with violet, and we're just gonna basically look for that wire color. I can't see squat. Okay, red with violet. It's gonna be one of these two connectors here. And I think it's this back one. Let me shove my head way up under here. Okay, that's got a red with violet on the very first connector. All right, so let's unplug this connector. Okay, now we can have a look at it. Yep, so that first pin here, all the way over in the corner, is red with a purple stripe. All right, let's go stick that fuse back in and see if our draw comes back. Because if it does, then we've got to go a different direction. Go back around here. Left our light over there. Oh, I can still see. You guys probably can't see, but I can. Imagine that. Fuse this back in. Let's go back out here. We had just a little blip, and then our draw. Let's change our time basis here, just so we get kind of a finer line on our screen. And our draw is somewhere in the 30 milliamp range. Now I don't know if that, at this point, realistically, we should have a meter on here. So why don't we do that so we can see the actual current draw, just to be on the safe side, because like I say, the current clamp becomes a little inaccurate when you're doing fine measurements. And as you can see here, we're at 10 milliamps, 10 to 12. It probably has an LED light in there flashing, is going to be my assumption. Because if we go to graphing meter and then amps internal, we might be able to see a little bit of a pattern here. We're going to go to 100 milliamps. Set it up on, say, 5 seconds across the screen. Yeah, so there must be an LED light that flashes in there, because you'll see that pattern, which that's pretty normal. Yeah, I don't know what that was initially that was turning on, but these small little humps, I bet if we go look, there's usually an LED or something flashing inside the car, but you can see we're holding, you know, that 10 milliamp range. And then there's something that is very, very brief there. But if you've done enough parasitic draw testing on a car, you'll know what's normal. Is there an LED that blinks in here somewhere? Oh, yep, up there on the dash. Yep, there it is. Wasn't watching. Yep, so you do have a blinking LED security light there because the doors are locked and the car's armed. All right. Well, that tells us something. Let me do a little more hokey pokey here, folks, but I guess let this be a lesson to you. You know, the discrepancy of the meter here, just because we don't have a really fine line. We run that down, you know, and that's showing us somewhere in that 40 milliamp range. So current clamps are good. When you start dealing with low current, it's oftentimes they're not super accurate, but they'll get you close once you're above, you know, 50 milliamps or so. So here's what we know. We know we unplug the radio and our draw goes away. The radio is turned on and turned off via CAN messages. So the data bus is what turns this on and off. You know, it's what says, hey, turn on. There's no wake up signal. There's no on off switch. It's just messages across the data bus. So that gives me a little bit of pause. I pause for a minute and I think, like, is there something that's, you know, telling it to turn on? You know, can we push the eject button on the media disc player, and, you know, is that something there stuck and it's telling us to, you know, keeps telling the radio module to wake up. There are steering wheel controls that has the phone voice, which is also one of the wires that runs down here. You know, really the only way to tell that for sure is to eliminate the data bus and any other input. Well, this connector is super tiny, and I don't know if I feel comfortable trying to depin it. Perhaps I do, but I'm wondering, alternatively, can we just supply power and ground to it? So there's just power and ground, and that's it. I would think if the data bus was up, I don't know. I got to think how to do this. Little bit outside the norm for me. I just don't want to make the wrong call, I guess is what I'm getting at. I don't want to make the wrong call, put a radio module in it, program it, still have the same problem because it's an input from something else, keeping that radio module alive. I looked for a silver bullet. I did look on Identifix to see if anybody else has ran across this problem. There's no hits. As a matter of fact, there was no hits for a 2014 Impala battery draw for anything. I did find a service bulletin from GM that stated about the OnStar and its habits of looking for a signal and, you know, seeing spikes on your waveform. And they gave the specs of the different generations of OnStar modules and what their typical patterns look like over time. So I'm nothing helpful there really. I'm gonna have to, let me think about this, how we want to do this. I'm curious if we can just apply power and ground to it the simplest way. And if our draw comes back, then we know it's not an input, it's just something in that radio module that's screwy. And that's that. I'm gonna stuff my head under there and see if that's feasible. We do have the female half of these pins that we can get out of our AES WaveView test kit and do that. So maybe that's the simple option. But then if we power and ground it and it doesn't turn on or doesn't recreate our draw, then what? You know, then what direction we go? And that's the question I always like to ask myself. If we do this and it doesn't work, then what? What's your next step? And when you get to the end of that, where you don't have an answer, usually you're at your problem. Usually you're at the answer. There is no other option. This is the answer. The decision has been made. I've unplugged all the connectors from the radio except for one antenna. I can't figure that sucker out. Maybe I can. I didn't want to break it, but there's just one single antenna. So I unplugged both USBs. I unplugged the most data bus, but there's this one antenna. I'm not sure right offhand. I don't want to break it, but it's not something I'm worried about, because that can't keep the radio on. Okay, I've ran 2 jumper wires to the radio. So let me set this down so we're not all wiggly. I looked on a diagram. There's 1 power and 1 ground. So pin 1 and pin 11. I ran our power to pin 1 and a ground to pin 11. The ground I grounded to the dash, and then the power I've got a power wire hooked all the way out to the battery. I ran in here on a 15 amp fuse jump wire, and then this red wire I've got here. So I've got power from the battery and then this, and we're going to hook it together. The current draw right now is 10 milliamps. We're just going to go like that, just make sure I'm not wrong. Okay, no big spark. What a wuss bag. Oops, there's a little spark. Holy shnikes. Yep, oh, look at that. We got a 200 milliamp draw, boys. Look at that concoction. Sweet. Look. 189 milliamp draw with just the radio power and ground. No data networks, no switch inputs, no nothing. Hallelujah. So that tells us right there. I'll let this sit for a while. I mean, I can't imagine it's going to time out. But that tells us right there. There's your problem, lady, right there. You got a bad radio module. It has to be it, because there's nothing else hooked to the radio right now. Just simple power and ground, and of course 1 antenna. And of course, I'm not going to be able to sleep right until I get that sucker unplugged to be sure. But any input, any types of inputs are unplugged. USB, most data bus, the CAN data bus 10, the LAN, the steering wheel controls, everything's unplugged from it. So it is 100% the source of our draw. That's it, easy peasy, just needs a new radio module. So I hope you guys understood why we did what we did, and we didn't just assume the radio module when we simply unplugged it. You always have to kind of look at stuff like that where, you know, the device isn't turned on and off by a switch, so to speak. You know, the CAN data bus is what turns this thing on and off. It sends a message, hey, radio, turn on, or something like that. I'm not real good at explaining that. You can look it up a little bit in service data, the theory and operation of what turns the radio module itself on and how it communicates to the display. But at the end of the day, you have to take away all the other variables when you're trying to prove out that module for a parasitic draw, because we want to know, is the steering wheel button stuck on? Is the disc player constantly pinging it to turn on, or the display module? I don't know. You could look up the theory and operation and see if any of that's possible, or you could just eliminate all inputs either by depinning, you know, the CAN bus from it that actually turns it on, that we know without really looking, or like what we did, supply its own simple power and ground. And if the draw is still there, it has to be the module, because there's nothing else, frankly. There's nothing that can turn it on or tell it turn on. It's just sitting there at consuming 200 milliamps, which is kind of bizarre. So because our draw is actually higher than that, it's 300, but perhaps when that's plugged in and turned on, the network's trying to turn it off, and there's other devices or other things going on. But I'm not going to overcomplicate it. I'm just going to make the call on the radio module. We've done other radio modules on other GMs before, and that's it. Hopefully these folks understand it can be a little difficult at sometimes dealing with older clientele, elderly people. I don't know how to say that nicely, but sometimes it's different. You know, communication is a little different. You know, they're in the days of dial phones and stuff like that, and cars back when cars were simple, and now, you know, you got, oh, what's this programming, and, you know, why is it so expensive? This is what it is, man. It's 2024, baby. And this is an older car, so fortunately for them, it's kind of stripped down, but I don't think those radio modules are too terribly expensive. I'll check on that morning. If I get the job, we'll bring you guys back along and do the programming and the verification so everybody can sleep at night. But in the meantime, before you go to sleep tonight, go in that comment section. Leave me a question in the comment. Find us on Insta, Facebook. You guys know where we're at. And just remember, viewers, if I can do it, you can do it. Thanks for watching. All right, folks, hoping to get some closure here for you on the Chevrolet Impala. I don't know where we left off with it because I haven't edited the first couple videos, but it has been several weeks, probably 2 or 3 weeks since I've seen this vehicle last. The lady's been driving it, has had no problems with it starting. Her only problem is she doesn't have a radio, so she wants to get that fixed. Can't blame her. I don't remember if I mentioned this in the first part, so I apologize if it is a repeat, but the radio is discontinued from GM. The car's 10 years old. They say scrap it. We no longer support it. We're not making the parts. You know, tough shit. That's what they told me. So I called Model Electronics, who does GM radios, who warranties their radios. It's their service center. When you call GM and get a radio, it actually comes through, you know, one of their suppliers. So I call their supplier, check with Model Electronics, say, here's the radio, here's the part number, here's the RPO. Can you fix this? And they said, no, forget about it. That's a discontinued number. We don't do it. We can't fix them. So great. So I checked with United Radio here in Syracuse because they also used to do GM clusters and radios and stuff. And they said, yeah, I gave them the part number. They said, sure, it's in our system. Send it in. We'll have a look at it. They took it in. The guy did check it out, and he did confirm same thing. When he hooks it to the data network, it won't shut off. It has a continual battery draw, and you know, yes, it's broken. The problem is they can't get parts to fix it. It's a Fujitsu radio. I don't know what that has to do with anything, but I'm just saying stuff. And apparently they just can't get whatever components they need to repair it. So the guy at United Radio, though, did tell me is if I could get a used one, he can wipe the VIN number from it. They can't do an EEPROM, they can't swap the software over, but he can get the VIN number out of it. So that'll give us hope of putting in a used one, because otherwise we can't use a used one. So that proposes a second or third problem. Getting a salvage yard to go check, you know, yeah, they have the car, yes, they, you know, claim to have the radio, but let's be honest, there's about 15 different RPO codes that the radio can be, and it's not really based off of anything that the salvage yard can look up other than going out to physically pull it out and see if our part number is an exact match. Same part number, same RPO code, you know, same radio. Getting a salvage yard to do that and not bust every single connector off it is a near impossible feat. However, these are like some elderly people, and I can't just tell them to go pound sand because, you know, your radio's discontinued, your car's 10 years old, you should shit can it, because that's what GM wants you to do. I'm trying to help them out the best I can. So after many phone calls, I finally get a salvage yard that will actually go and look and confirm that they have the correct radio and sell it to me. Which is bizarre to me because they want to sell motors and trannies, which they have to stand behind, but they could be selling electronic jiggly bits, be making a hell of a lot more than they're going to make on motors and trannies, but it's just hard to get that transition in today's day and age with these salvage yards, because most of them are still really stuck in that mindset. We've got to sell these big hard parts, motors and trannies, when really you could sell 2 headlights off the car, profit way more than you're going to on that engine, and it's not going to come back knocking. So they've got to snap out of it at some point. That was a little sidetrack. Radio's here, sent it to United Radio, they erased the VIN from it, sent back both radios, and I have it programming right now using GM SPS. To do a radio programming on these, it takes hours, and I'm 2.5 hours in, and it's still, I think there's still like 50 minutes left. So it takes a very long time to do the programming, so I'm just waiting for that to finish. And fingers crossed, all will be right in the world, and it will work, and it will accept the programming, it will accept the new VIN number, and you know, the people will be back on the road for the silly battery draw. Anyhow, that's where we're at. Just wanted to check in, give you guys a good follow-up. Yeah, we're down to 35 minutes, the spinning wheel of death. But yeah, I don't know what it is with radio modules at GMs, but man, they take forever to get done. So we're just sitting here, you know, key on, got the MDI 2 in there blinking away. and just hurry up and waiting, and I'll let you guys know how she turns out in the end. All right, 3 hours later. Man, it took a long time. We still got to put that together. I've left the key off here for a little bit. There wasn't any further instructions. Oh, that's good. We had nothing before. Well, nothing before. When I first put that in use, we had nothing. A little static in the background blink display. So let's see here. Well, we'll just go audio. So let's see, her XM ID is going to be different. Probably won't get a signal inside here. All right, I'll have to give her that ID number because she's going to have to redo that. All right, we got some noise. All right, well, I'm not gonna mess with my settings. We can go through and we can set the time for her. We can do all that. What time is it? It's almost noon. Great, man, this is great. Now, I guess what we have to do is we have to verify. Oh, can we do auto set? What's that? Oh, and cell network, okay. Well, anyhow, we'll quit messing with this. It works now, that's great. I guess the big moment of truth is here, we'll shut things off. We'll verify, with a little bit of luck, that our draw is coming. I'll take the car, we'll lock her up. Well, I better latch the hood and stuff. I'll get it in the set conditions here, and we'll make sure that our draw is gone. So it's only been just a moment. I've got this hooked up here right now. We're at 375 milliamps, or yeah, 375 milliamps, 0.375 amps. But it's only been like 2 minutes. I latched the latch, double locked the doors. Keys are out of it. Everything should be turned off here on the inside, which it is. And then we wait. We just gotta wait for it to go to sleep. I don't remember what our current draw was before, but General Motors usually takes, I don't know, 20 minutes, half hour or so to turn everything off. So I'll check back with you guys here when this kicks off, or maybe it doesn't, which would suck. There you have it, folks. We're about, well, 10 minutes into it. 13 milliamps, everything turned off. The little blurps you see coming across the screen are the red LED security LEDs that flash in there. So that's it. It timed out way quicker than I thought. Right around, like I say, right around that 10-minute mark. So I'm gonna hook this back up, and that's it. We're gonna move on with life. And we'll leave it at that, folks. Fortunately for these folks, we were able to fix it. However, it did drag out for several weeks. You know, I mean, they were driving the car in the meantime. You know, don't get me wrong, they had the vehicle to use, but diagnosing it was easy. It was just the rest of the rigmarole, trying to see if we could get the one fixed and then find out that we can't, and then trying to locate a used one, and the problems that were, you know, that came along with that I mentioned about the salvage yards. So, which is difficult. But I think it's pretty pathetic for General Motors to discontinue a part in a 10-year-old car, and just to know that if this lady took this car to the local Chevy dealer, they couldn't fix it. They have no choice. They're, no, we can't fix it. You got to go buy a new car. They don't make parts. It's discontinued. Your car's junk. 10 years old, 45,000 miles, garbage. You know, or at least you have no radio. And this, as you see those radio modules sitting there, it's not as simple as just, well, just yank it out and just slap a, you know, single DIN, you know, JC Whitney radio in there. It's not really like that anymore. So this is integral to the car. It's integrated into the network. It's integrated into the OnStar, the, you know, the XM, you know, everything. So there are options, but I think it's just pretty, you know, poor of a company like that to, you know, to do something like that, to have a car that's literally this new, so to speak, and, you know, just no longer supported. So anyways, why don't you give me some support in that comment section? Questions, comments, find us on Insta, Facebook. You guys know where we're at. And just remember, viewers, if I can do it, you can do it. Thanks for watching.